Thanks. And thanks to everybody in attendance. Thanks for being here with us today. I want to thank our very special guests as well. We have last year at our first together, we did a panel of real estate agents and inspectors. And that was extremely popular. So we are doing another real estate agent and inspector roundtable right now. So I will be asking some questions of the realtors who are kind enough to join us today. And if you have questions, please throw them into the Q&A. And I am happy and lucky enough to have Lauren, HomeGauge Lauren, as well as Realtor Lauren with us, who will be asking some questions from our attendees as well. So Kristen and Lauren, if you could unmute yourselves and introduce yourselves, that would be wonderful. Say who you are, where you're from, who you work for, what your specialties are, and how long you've been an agent for. That'd be great. Kristen, why don't you go first?
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Kristen Patterson. And first of all, I want to say thank you to all the inspectors out there. You guys put up with us all the time, us realtors, and we really appreciate you. And I know we don't tell you guys thank you enough. So thanks for all you do for us. I work at Dobie Real Estate. It is in Michigan. I live in the Metro Detroit area. The brokerage is in Birmingham, Michigan. We are a smaller boutique brokerage and just 3 years in the business. And I have been in real estate for 5 years. I work a lot with buyers, a lot with first-time buyers. And yeah, I love everything about it.
Great. And Lauren, what about you?
Hi, I'm Lauren Eady. I'm here in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm with Keller Williams, downtown, Keller Williams Professionals. I too have been in the business about the same length of time, 6 years. Work with lots of first-time home buyers. Buyers do a little bit of listings here and there, but I really love my buyers. So anyway, it's great to be here as well. I don't think I can do as great of a job as Kristen of thanking everyone, but thanks for inviting me, and thank you for everything that you do. I love HomeGauge. It makes my life a lot easier.
Wonderful. So let's start off with the questions. Kristen, I'll start with you again, but if you could both answer, that'd be wonderful. How do you find the inspectors that you work with right now? How do you vet them and come across who it is that you want to work with?
Yeah. So I have a handful of inspectors that I work with. And once I get comfortable and know an inspector well, I really try to use them as a repeat inspector because I know they're going to do a great job and I'm comfortable using them. I have gotten inspectors before from agents around my office. Agents have great referrals for agents as well as buyers. Buyers will tell me, like, my friend just used this inspector and he was the best. So buyers actually are a great resource for finding really great inspectors as well. And once I use them and I like them, I love working with them again. Sometimes it will be, right now inspectors, we need an inspection so quickly. Sometimes I have to reach out to multiple inspectors before I can find a day and time that lines up.
Thanks. What about you, Lauren?
Probably about the same, and that I have one particular company that I started with locally that has about 10 inspectors on board. And I used them for the first couple years, and then now the timeline crunch is what we're dealing with in our market right now. So I've reached out to referrals basically, and found some pretty good inspectors. I've had a few that I wasn't super impressed, I will say that. But when you do find someone good and they're willing to work with your schedule, or call you like, oh, this got canceled, then that's super important for me. And of course, if I can call them and they answer.
And Lauren, we'll start with you for this one. So when you think of the inspectors that you use, what is it about them that clicks with you that makes you want to continue using them?
Well, number one, as I was looking through the questions, I'm like, wow, okay, this is a repeat thing. If you don't scare my client. So I love, oh, this is super important. This is something that we need to worry about, or, a handyman can fix this. When we're on site, I like to be there at the inspection. I like to, for my client to be there as well. And some people have a little bit, they're a little bit better at, letting you know, oh, this is easy. It's a simple fix, or like, this is huge. And also keeping them calm at the same time. So that's important to me.
Okay, Kristen, with you, what makes it, what really clicks for you with an inspector?
Yeah, well, definitely everything that Lauren said, and kind of going along with that, inspector who can really just communicate effectively with the buyer without making them nervous, just kind of walking them through everything and educating them like, hey, this is no big deal, or this is something you're going to have to look into. Or, if it's a first time home buyer, they might be very unfamiliar with a lot of different things in the homes, so it's very helpful when an inspector can even tell somebody like, hey, you need to change your furnace filter out, and, just different things that if you can educate along the way of the process during the inspection and showing them different things around the house, it not only kind of eases the buyer's mind about buying the home, but also once they're living in the home, they're comfortable, they kind of know their way around everything. So it just really just educating them throughout the home and everything is really important and makes things a lot easier.
And Kristen, not to take things in a negative direction, but do you have any like worst stories of working with an inspector? Anything stand out?
So I'm not going to go with worse. I'm going to go with maybe things that could have been done differently.
Yeah,
I will say, I'll word it that way. So I think communication is very important. And I think that if, you can communicate with a buyer, maybe even beforehand. I had a situation one time that I'm in Michigan, so there'll be snow on the ground, and, in the winter and there's snow on a roof, you can't really see a roof, and, different things might come up like that a buyer might not be aware of. So I had a situation that when we got to the inspection, the buyer was really wanting to know the condition of the roof. And unfortunately, the inspector couldn't really inspect it because it was covered in snow and it really wasn't safe for him to do so. So from that situation, it would have been very helpful for me to have asked the buyer previously, what is really important for you for an inspector to be looking into? What are your major concerns that we can make sure are addressed at the inspection? And if I would have done that beforehand and the client would have told me, I'm really concerned about this roof, possibly me and the inspector could have come up with another solution before we had got to the home, or made some different arrangements or different things like that. So I feel like the more that you can communicate, or even if an inspector were to say to me when I'm scheduling the inspection, hey, is there anything that's really important to your client? Because I want to make sure that I have that covered for them. Like, that'll go a long way, because I'm, moving fast and I might forget to ask those questions. So, that'd be very helpful to know up front what they're concerned with, so we can make sure that we address those. Along with, a lot of times during inspections, we have to move things. If it's opening an attic opening and you have debris that falls down and gets on the floor, sometimes you have a seller that might be unhappy about different things that got moved around their home. So any of that communication that we could do up front, I always try to do, and let sellers know, like, hey, can you make sure we have access to the attic and all the clothes are taken out of the closet? So different things like that, if we can communicate them up front, it goes a long way. As well as I've had some, inspectors maybe leave a note behind that said, thank you so much for letting us inspect your beautiful home. Sorry if we didn't leave it in the condition that, we got here and we did have to move a few things around. Like when you're upfront with that communication, it really goes a long way.
That's some great food for thought and really good. I think that is some really good advice for folks. So thank you. And Lauren, what about you? Do you have any times where things could have gone better?
Not really. I mean, I had to think on that one for a second. The only things that I've ever had was things that were overlooked. And that's another why I always go to the inspection is, the inspector comes, looks at the house, and I come in the last 45 minutes for a summary. And I, one day was walking around a back porch and looked underneath, and the porch was totally leaning, and I don't know how he missed it. But it was kind of a big deal to me. And of course I asked him to put it in a report, and we, took care of it. But that's the only complaint I think I've ever really had was items overlooked. And usually we don't know about those items overlooked until after the inspection, after the home buyers bought the home and they're like, yes, our inspector overlooked these items. So,
Okay.
but yeah, no one thing that was super bad. No.
Well, then let's turn it around. What are some of your standout stellar moments with inspectors? Any good memories or good things that have happened that stick out for you?
There is a guy here in town, and it's kind of funny, but I've been thinking about doing it myself after what he does. He carries a cooler in the back of his truck, and he has like soda waters. I hope it's okay. He has beer in there. It's Asheville. Um, and he'll, give you a beer. He has some chips and candy. There might be kids and they want some chips or whatever. And it's kind of cool. We show up in that last 45 minutes for the review, and they have a beer or a snack and go over the items that we're seeing. And it I think helps, smooth things over. Not that we want to smooth things over, but it's a nice touch.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. And Kristen, what about you? What shining moments do you have with inspectors?
Yeah, I'm fortunate to work with a lot of great inspectors. And one thing I really appreciate about inspectors are people don't buy that many houses in a lifetime. So people come to an inspection, they're a little bit nervous and they don't know what to expect. So when an inspector can walk a client through what the process is of an inspection as soon as they walk in the door, it's very comforting for everybody. When the inspector lets them know, like, hey, so in Michigan, the agent does need to be present for the inspection. So I'm present the whole time as well as the inspector. So when the inspector says to the buyers, hey, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to, inspect the whole home. If you would like to walk around and follow me, you can. If you would like to, tour the home on your own time, feel free to walk around. When I see something that's concerning, I'm going to come and get you and show it to you. I'm going to inspect the house from the outside to the inside, top to bottom, like as much detail as you can give a buyer up front. They really take that information as calming, and then you let them know, I'm going to look for the minor and the major defects. And at the end of this, I'm going to have a beautiful report for you to review. And we're going to go over that in detail, and you'll have a copy, and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How much you can walk the buyer through the whole experience is very helpful for everybody in the whole process. So I always really appreciate that.
Great. And Kristen, what about red flags? Are there any red flags that stand out to you that might make you avoid using a specific inspector?
For me, it's we call them deal killers. If you're an inspector that maybe doesn't deliver news very well to a buyer, it might just be a very simple issue that could have been communicated differently. in houses all the time that don't have proper GFIs. And, I had a buyer who thought like the electrical in his whole entire house was wrong because there was one plug that didn't have a GFI. So, again, it's educating the buyer. When you do come across something, I realize you can't explain everything, but if it is something simple that you could explain to the buyer and let them know, like, this is just a minor defect, or possibly you can, let them know. It's very helpful when they say it's a minor fix or a major fix, just to kind of categorize those things, and that every home does have, defects in it. And, it's part of the being a homeowner. And so that's kind of my deal killer.
Mm-hmm. And Lauren, what about you? Any red flags for you?
I was just reading all the comments and it was getting me off a little bit. I do like that in Michigan, you go through the inspection with him. Here with the inspector, it's more like they want us to come at the end, so they have that quiet, private time to, I guess, think about it. Sometimes I have had my buyers, they're constantly like tapping on the inspector's shoulder. Hey, what about this? And bothering the inspector a little bit. With red flags, I think mine is the biggest with communication. Your inspector can make or break a deal. If he scares them, and they don't feel comfortable, then that could break the deal. They are walking into it nervous. Most of the time, most people don't buy but 1 or 2 homes in their lifetime. So it's a scary experience a little bit. Education, I think, is super important. I try to educate my buyers as much as I can. So having an inspector that also is helping out with the education is super important. And also if they give referrals, that's important as well. So yeah, no big red flags. 1, 2 is, I ask around my community, have you used this inspector before? How do you feel about this inspector? Sometimes a red flag is also maybe being a discount inspector, being a little bit too available, has been a bit of a red flag in the past.
That's interesting. And so, what are some of the ways that inspectors can and could make your life easier? Lauren, do you have any? Yeah.
Photos that happened recently was, there was not but maybe 3 things that were, that we felt were super important in the inspection. And one was larger than the biggest of the 3, I guess. He put 1 photo and I had to contact the HOA, and I didn't have enough photos for them and had to go back and take photos. And they wanted to see the report, and so that was a little bit of a disappointment for me.
Okay. And Kristen, what about for you, ways that inspectors do and potentially could make your job easier?
Yeah, well, they definitely do. And one thing is inspectors really have the authority and give great advice on the home. And sometimes I might say something about a home and a buyer will say, well, I'm going to ask the inspector. So it's really helpful to kind of have another sound voice, and maybe it's some item that's concerning, or something like that. And it's also very helpful, the documentation that inspectors provide, especially when there is a lot of negotiations after an inspection, and it might be an item that came up. And when that item is documented and there's photos, and then a lot of times might end up calling the inspector back and saying like, hey, do you remember that leak under this sink in the bathroom? Could you explain what we thought that was again? So it's just very helpful when inspectors can kind of go more in depth on some of the items that I have questions on, so that I can, help my client to get that fixed, and maybe the seller fix it or anything like that. So just very helpful when they can give me the information to help the buyer get what they need to get the home fixed. So I always appreciate that.
All right, and the questions are coming in from our attendees. So I think I'll pause with the ones, the questions I already have right now, and ask a couple from our attendees. Andrew asks, and Kristen, if you could start with this one, how many homes are you selling without inspections? It's happening a lot in our area due to how fast the house goes.
So no, I am not selling any houses without an inspection. I don't think it's as common. I'm not sure where you're from. In my area, it's not as common. No, I have done some more deals along the lines of getting our offer accepted and putting in the offer. We will not be asking anything in the inspection, but we actually do the inspection, but the wording is that we're not going to be doing any negotiation after. So I don't know, Lauren, if you have any different experience in your area with that.
If I had a buyer that didn't want to do inspection, I don't know if it was a financial thing, I would probably do the inspection for them. And buy the inspection for them as a closing gift. I think inspections are very important, and I stress that from the beginning, whether it's a new home or if it's a home that's 50 years old. There's always something, and we want to discover that before you close on the home. So yeah, I don't do that. It's a personal, I just can't.
All right, well, that is what we want to hear. And Lauren, we had a question come in that mentioned you specifically about your comment about valuing referrals. And the question is, what type? To contractors or to other inspectors if we are booked up at the time you request? And they thank you for your time.
So with referrals, it's referrals to maybe someone that can give me an estimate, a plumber that they've worked with recently, or a buyer has used, maybe a structural engineer. That's what I mean by referrals, is, someone that can help us on the next step, because the home inspection is just one stop, and it's usually the first stop.
All right, and we'll get to the other questions later on in the presentation. So let's talk the present right now. How have things changed for you recently concerning your work and inspections, dealing in the area that you are with COVID-19, and what direction do you predict things moving in? Well, Lauren, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was my turn or not. It's just a faster market. I do think maybe buyers are accepting things that in the past they maybe would not have. Home warranties are very important to me right now. I think every buyer should try to get a home warranty as well. If it's, even a 5-year-old home, to protect those appliances. But yeah, it's just a faster moving deal. I haven't seen anyone, and of course I wouldn't want anyone to try to purchase a home that had a bunch of red flags. But we are trying to take care of things on the back end as opposed to the front. When we used to get repairs and estimates done before close, well, I say repairs. Now we get a check cut at close to have those repairs done after close. So it's just a lot faster way that we're doing things.
All right, and Kristen, what is your take on that?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Right now with the market in Michigan and like a lot of areas, houses are selling very quickly. And I think it had to do with, the other comment about waiving inspections and things like that. So buyers really don't have much room to negotiate after an inspection. So it's kind of like take it or leave it. So it's very helpful when an inspector can kind of walk them through any of the concerns, because a lot of them the buyer is going to be handling on their own. The seller's really not fixing many things for any buyers because they'll just move on to the next offer. So for the market moving really quickly, that's what I've seen. There's really not any negotiations after inspections. And then from COVID, we just, at least in Michigan, don't allow many people at the inspection. Right now, it's the agent, the inspector, and the buyers of the home. Those are the only people that are allowed. So having less eyes on the home can be a good and bad thing. It's usually when you sell a house, especially if it's a first-time home buyers, it might be, mom and dad and brother and sister and a bunch of other people that come to the inspection. And right now, unfortunately, that is not possible. So just less time in the home and just really no negotiations after inspections.
Okay, and Kristen, when a transaction is in process and it's time to hire an inspector, do you say, here are 3 referrals that I've got for you? Do you say this is my preferred inspector? How does that work for you?
Yeah, well, it's usually the client that will ask me that question usually right away, because they're so excited to get moving on the transaction, and they're like, okay, we got to schedule our inspection. And they'll usually say to me, do you have an inspector for me? I'm really nervous about the inspection. And that's when I'll say, yes, I have preferred inspectors that I use and I refer them out. Otherwise, sometimes, the buyer will let me know, I already have an inspector. I already know somebody that I want to use. So it kind of goes both ways.
And Lauren, what about you? How does that process work for you?
With choosing inspectors, I always give them the option. Usually it depends on them and their schedule too. If I know they're going to be working on Monday morning and we got under contract on Friday afternoon, I'm going to try to do it for them and take over the wheel as much as I can. As far as booking it, now choosing it, I give them a list of options. Here's a guy that I normally use, or here's a company that I normally use. Otherwise, do you have someone that you have chosen yourself? And like I said, sometimes when they shop around for the best price, it's not the best inspector. So if it's someone that, a friend of theirs used and they feel like they can trust, I feel better about it. But I always try to say, do your homework. So yeah, I don't mind, even if they have chosen an inspector, I like to make that appointment for them, and make it a little bit easier for them.
Okay. And this is a question that I think is going to be it'd be really interesting to hear the answer to. What about with newer inspectors? If you have newer inspectors who want to get, who want to get agents on their side and want to get those agent referrals, Lauren, what advice do you have for them?
Wow. I've had a pretty good bit of experience, I would say, with newer inspectors. And I've had ones that are so eager to do a great job that they maybe go a little bit overboard. We get like this crazy thick inspection report. So back, like we were saying, anything you can do to make them feel comfortable. You want to definitely tell them about the big red flags, but also don't scare them with an inspection report that's every tiny thing that they could find. Maybe a screw isn't completely screwed in somewhere random. I don't know. So that would be one thing. With new people too, I had a guy that recently, he was a new guy, and he got my name through his sister, and then he sent me texts, he emailed me, and then when I couldn't find an inspector, I called him. And just like being a new realtor, you have to contact everyone you know on your phone, and then show them that you're good at your job.
All right. And Kristen, what advice do you have for inspectors out there who are trying to, work with agents and get referrals from them?
Yeah, I actually had an inspector that did this at my office, and it's one of the inspectors that I currently work with. He was, things might be a little bit different because of COVID and everything that happens in different areas, but was a few years ago, and he would drop in our office. He would drop things off. He would ask if we have any new agents. He would say, I'd love to do different trainings for your new agents. So, he would prepare different PowerPoints about different items that come up in an inspection. He would show the agents what inspection reports looks like. He would make specialized trainings, maybe for mold or radon or, furnace, different things like that, to kind of help educate the agent on what happens in an inspection. Because if same thing with a new agent, you don't know what an inspection is like and what to look for and different things like that. So that would be something great that you could offer as a new inspectors, to do trainings at different offices for agents. And the inspector that did that at my office, he probably he offered it all the time, and I think in his class he might get 2 agents, but he would end up at our office talking with other agents, getting comfortable with other people. And then, so it wasn't even just the connections that he would make in that class, had a lot to do with the connections that he would make around our whole office. So I think it's just very important to maybe pick out a few offices so that you can be consistent and keep on going back and offering trainings or, anything that you're comfortable with doing to help out other realtors and get your name out there.
Okay. Let's see. So we have a couple of questions from our attendees. So what are your thoughts? Kayla asks, Lauren, should we follow up with real estate agents to see what they thought of us as a new inspector?
Absolutely. I was thinking that earlier. That would be an awesome little extra touch. Following up and reaching out, how did you feel about it? Because they might have, just some friendly comments that could help you do a little bit better next time. Maybe you overlooked something, or there was something they really liked that you should continue doing.
And what about you, Kristen? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely think that is super helpful on, just different things that would have helped. I appreciate when people give me feedback all the time as well. So, just maybe different little things that would help the process go smoother and everybody feel more comfortable and that type of thing. So yeah, I definitely think that would be a great idea.
And what about, we have another one. Travis is asking if either of you have ever recommended to a client not to buy a home.
Yes, I have. I was actually a newer agent to the business, and the home looked like it had some pretty serious foundation issues. And they said they wanted to put an offer in on it. And I said, it looks like it needs some pretty extensive work. If I was you, I would not buy this home. And they said, well, we want it. And I said, okay, well, you'll have an inspection. So the inspector will be able to walk everything through it with you. And the inspector called me and said, I drove by the home. I can tell from the outside, I think it's going to fall over. So on that home, we didn't even actually make it into the home. When we met the client at the home, the inspector kind of walked them through the foundation issues that the home would have. And so they ended up not even doing an inspection or moving forward with the deal. So yes, I hope when I sell a house to a buyer that when they go to sell the home that they're going to call me. I want to sell their home when they go to sell it. So when an inspector misses an item, or if I was pushy to get them to buy that home, it's going to reflect poorly on me when they call me to sell the home. And there's all these issues that I knew about before. So, I want a buyer to buy a home that is going to be a good fit for them.
Lauren, have you ever recommended against purchasing a house or a home?
Absolutely. He's actually my climbing partner. I went climbing with him earlier today now. Yes, same thing. It was foundation. We came out, the inspector showed us the foundation in Western North Carolina. It's, it's mountainous, and the land isn't always that stable. And yeah, it was a hard sell because it had an additional little tiny home that could be an Airbnb. It was zoned perfectly. And I just was like, I wouldn't buy this home if I were you. And he went on to find another home, and he's very happy with it. But yeah, I don't ever want to sell a home that down the road is going to have huge issues that are going to cost a bunch of money. Or like Kristen said, if I want to resell it for them, I want to make sure it's something that I can resell.
All right, and we have a couple of questions left and about 10 minutes. So if anybody has any other questions for Kristen and Lauren, please do put them in the Q&A. Kayla asks a couple of questions. The first one, I'll direct to you, Lauren. Is it helpful to have a price sheet or folder for realtors initially when we are going out to make connections?
Absolutely. I do kind of a buyer's consultation. Now that COVID is a thing, I do it like this, Zoom or over the phone. And I always have a price sheet in there. I carry a price sheet in my car because they want to know what does it cost. So I have the company that I've used for on and off for the last 6 years that I said has about 10 inspectors on board. And I have that price sheet in my car. I'll email other price sheets to them if they want to kind of shop around. But yes, absolutely. Education, anything you can have to educate your buyers, the happier they're going to be.
I think that something you said really stuck out to me, Lauren, and I'll ask you both this. You talked about, meeting people on Zoom or over the phone. How are you meeting inspectors right now? Are people still doing office presentations, or how are new, inspectors getting in touch with you right now?
Mine are either like through the company, like I said, that I've used for several years. I'll reach out through there, and of course line up with them. I am meeting them in person with a mask on, and it's kind of the same in a way. I guess they're getting a hold of me. Mainly email, Facebook Messenger. People have contacted me, said, hey, I'm a new inspector. Right now is a great time to be a new inspector because everyone that has, their regular realtor client connection is super busy. So being a new inspector, there should be a lot of opportunity out there.
Kristen, what methods are people employing to meet you or others that you know?
Yeah, I've seen some inspectors invite people to a Zoom meeting that kind of has informational, educational pieces for realtors. mostly just emails, a lot of text messages, and not very many phone calls, mostly just email and text messages. So I will say phone calls also go a long way. I know we're busy, we don't always answer the phone, but it's always nice to, multiple methods I think work well.
And Kristen, Kayla had another question about reports being too long. It says, you mentioned, I'm not sure which one of you mentioned this, but what would you consider being too long for a report? Do you only want photos of the bad in a report?
Too long. I guess too long isn't a problem. It's more of being able to filter through and identify easily the main issues that were found during the inspection. So, I mean, if you want to take a picture of every item in the whole entire house, I guess that's fine with me, as long as, you can sift through the report easily and get the items that really you are looking for. That's really what's important, to be able to decipher what's important and make that information stand out, whether it's at a summary at the end, or some way to get the important information seen.
Lauren, do you have something in mind that would make a report too long? And do you have a preference about when there are photographs, if you only want the...
Right.
Yeah.
I believe I'm the one that said that too. So I was like, guilty. I have had inspections, and this hasn't happened in a few years, but I've had a gentleman that he didn't use computers. So I had to print out the inspection, and it was a huge report. And the summary itself was also huge. So if you do want to, post a picture or put up a picture of every little thing, every ding in the wall, that's great. Just do a really great summary report that is going to summarize the big items, so that it's not going to be too overwhelming, and I can refer my client to that when they see that 80-page inspection.
Yeah. Something kind of going along that, I remember one time an inspector did this and it actually really impressed me. The clients were older, and he knew from different communication that they did not really communicate on email, and they weren't really savvy with printing things off or receiving anything with email. This inspector has a printer that he brings with him, and he printed off the report right there in their kitchen so that they could walk away with the report, because he knew it was going to be too hard for that particular client to receive it any other way. So that was definitely really impressive. So I know somebody mentioned in the chat something about being able to speak with the client to know what to expect at the inspection. So something like that really went far, that this inspector went above and beyond to present them with the report, so that they could walk away with it.
Okay, so we have about 2 minutes left and 2 questions. So I'll just ask each of you to do a closing statement. They sort of go together. So the questions are, Robin asks, have you ever given the inspector feedback on what they did that may have killed your deal, to ask them if they could have done it differently? Inspectors have to be aware of their liability, but don't believe any of them intentionally try to kill deals. They had value on specifics, they could change their methods. And the other question is, what do you feel is the #1 finding that alarms your clients? So if you want to speak to either or both of those. Kristen, if you want to go ahead with that.
Mm-hmm. I guess certain things that are very alarming to clients. For me, I find mold is very alarming for clients. That can sometimes actually be a deal breaker, that they won't move forward on buying a home. In Michigan, there's very high radon levels. So that's something that we test for as well. So with those, or anything that comes up in the inspection, kind of knowing that the impact and the avenues that a buyer can take if they do find those things in their home. So it's more of, when you do find the defects or things that need to be fixed, how how to do that, or what information, how they can go. I had, you know, a inspector that gives out a list of contacts of everybody that they can contact. And that actually goes pretty far with buyers as well.
Great. And Lauren, what about you? Do you give inspectors feedback on what they may have done to sort of make a deal go sour, or and also what in your experience is the number one thing that you would say alarms your clients?
I think I could leave better feedback. This is making me realize that, you know, a little constructive criticism or being like, great job, can go a long way. And then what was the other question again?
Oh, the number one
Oh.
thing that you think is alarming to your clients.
Termites, that's a big one. And foundation.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions from our attendees, and we are at time, I just want to thank everybody for being here. I really want to thank you, Kristen and Lauren, for coming and for providing this input and speaking with us today.